USS Barb, the submarine that sunk a train in Japan. Picture this: July 1945. The Pacific War is burning toward its final act. Off the coast of Japan, in the dead of night, 8 American submariners crawl across hostile ground, carrying 55 pounds of explosives on their backs. Their mission is something no submarine crew in history had ever attempted. They weren't hunting ships. They weren't preparing torpedoes. They were about to destroy a Japanese train on land. This is the incredible story of USS Barb, the submarine that carried out one of the most daring and bizarre missions of World War II. A story so outrageous that you saw it on screen, you'd call it unrealistic fiction. The Hunter and his commander. By 1945, the USS Barb was already the terror of Japanese shipping. Under the command of Commander Eugene "Lucky" Fluckey, the submarine had become a legend. Fluckey was bold, brilliant, and famously, unpredictably a man who saw opportunity where others saw risk. But Fluckey had a problem. There were hardly any enemy ships left to hunt. American submarines had devastated Japanese supply lines so thoroughly that the surviving fleets clung to coastal waters. Supplies were moved on land by road and rail, far out of torpedo range. For most submarine commanders, this meant returning home with unused torpedoes, a quiet sign of failure. But Eugene Fluckey was not most commanders. The impossible idea. Fluckey came up with a plan that seemed absurd. Use the submarine crew to blow up a train. Submarines did not do land missions. They did not launch raiding teams. They definitely did not crawl ashore with explosives to sabotage railways. Yet Fluckey believed it could be done. And amazingly, someone in the Navy's chain of command heard his outlandish plan and said, "All right, go blow up a train." The hunt begins on July 18, 1945. USS Barb surfaced in Patience Bay off Karafuto, now Sakhalin, north of Hokkaido. Fluckey had been watching a railway line that wound along the coast. He observed trains carrying supplies essential for Japan's war effort. They ran close, almost temptingly close to the shore. The team could get in quickly, plant charges, and escape undetected. A submarine, of all things, could strike Japan where it felt safest, on land. Fluckey selected 8 volunteers, led by LT William Walker. Their tools were scuttling charges normally used to destroy their own submarine if it were ever captured. The irony was powerful. The crew would use the Barb's self-destruct explosives to destroy the enemy instead. It's the midnight raid. At 1:15 a.m. on July 23, 1945, the mission began. USS Barb surfaced under cover of darkness. Rubber rafts were lowered silently into the cold water. The 8 sailors paddled toward the shore, every splash echoing across the night as the submarine remained vulnerable above the waves. When the landing party reached the beach, they immediately ran into trouble. The shoreline was covered in loose stones that clattered loudly beneath their boots, hemming pitch-black silence. The sound was deafening. Every step felt like an alarm bell, but they pushed on. They found the railway line exactly where Fluckey had predicted and began improvising an explosive setup none of them had been formally trained for. These were submariners, not saboteurs. They wired the charge to the rail and attached a microswitch that would trigger only when the weight of a train pressed down. The trap was perfect. The race against time. Just as they finished setting the explosives and began retreating toward the beach, they heard a distant rumble. A train. But they were still on land. If the train hit the charge before they returned to the submarine, the blast would alert the entire coastline. Japanese patrols would swarm the area. The Barb, still surfaced, would be a glowing target in the dark. The 8 men sprinted across the rocky beach, sliding, stumbling, dragging the rafts into the surf. Desperately, as the train's rumbling grew louder. On board the Barb, Fluckey prepared for an emergency dive that could only begin once every crew member was safely aboard. The landing team reached the submarine. Sailors grabbed arms and gear, hauling the saboteurs up the hull as they shoved rafts inside. The moment the hatch shut, All eyes turned north. A single beam of light cut through the night. The train, the explosion that shook the coast. Seconds later, the microswitch clicked. The explosion tore through the night like thunder splitting the sky. The train practically vaporized under the power of the scuttling charges. Cars flew off the tracks, ammunition inside them igniting into secondary blasts. Flames lit up the coastline so brightly that it looked like the sun had risen early. The crew of the Barb erupted in cheers. Against all logic, a submarine had successfully destroyed a land targeter trained during wartime. Plucky immediately ordered to dive. The Barb sank beneath the waters, just as Japanese searchlights swept across the bay, searching for saboteurs they never imagined could have come from the sea. The aftermath and the legend when USS Barb returned to Pearl Harbor. The mission was instantly recognized as one of the most astonishing operations of the war. Eugene Fluckey was awarded the Medal of Honor for his unmatched creativity and daring leadership. The attack wasn't just a spectacle, it had real military impact. The train was believed to be carrying supplies, munitions, and possibly personnel critical to Japan's defense. Fluckey had identified a vulnerability and exploited it with tactical brilliance. Yet, even today, a mystery remains. Japanese wartime records from that region are fragmented or destroyed. Historians know the train exploded, but the full details of its cargo, casualties, or strategic value remain unresolved. The USS Barb's battle flag, now displayed at the Submarine Force Museum in Connecticut, features a tiny locomotive stitched into its fabric. No other American submarine carries such an emblem, and none likely ever will. The legacy: Eugene Fluckey went on to become a vice admiral, but he always said the train mission was the proudest moment of his career. It represented everything he believed about warfare, that ingenuity, boldness, and courage could achieve the impossible. On that extraordinary night in 1945, the USS Barb rewrote naval warfare history. It proved that victory often belongs not to the strongest, but to the most creative. A submarine ruled the seas, and for one unforgettable moment, it conquered the rails too.